Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kim Dalsgaard Christensen. I am the Chief Commercial Officer at Continia Software. I will be your host today, but in just a few minutes, I will hand things over to my colleague who will guide you through the main part of the session. But before we get started, I want to take a moment to say thank you to all partners and customers around the world. Today, more than 20,000 customers rely on Continia solutions supported by over 14,000 people across more than 2,000 Business Central partners. That's an amazing community, and it is what keeps us moving forward. On behalf of everyone at Continia Software, thank you for your trust, your commitment, and for being a part of this journey. All our solutions have now been upgraded to the new 2026 R1 version, which support Business Central 2026 Wave 1, also known as version 28 in both the Continia and Microsoft world. This means that any company starting up on Business Central Online version 28 will automatically be working with our new version 28 through Microsoft Marketplace. And for those running Business Central on premises, the extensions supporting version 28 are either available right now or very close to for our partners at our Partner Zone portal. And these are our offerings as today, a full suite of empowering finance processes within travel and expenses, financial management, payments, accounts payable, and accounts receivable automations. All solutions are available as a free 30-day trial through Microsoft Marketplace. But right here and right now, all focus is on document output, and for that purpose, I will leave sound and vision to my great colleague Daniel to guide you through what's new in document output 2026 R1. Take it away, Daniel.
All right, thank you, Kim. All right, let's get started. So my name is Daniel Stello. I'm the solution specialist for document output. And it is my pleasure today to present the news in document output for the current release. And first off, and this is the big one, this is the e-document transition. So some of you might already know e-documents from document capture, and parts of it has now been moved to document output. This is the main focus for today as well. But on top of that, we have some improvements as well. In the more traditional sense, we have added a fallback to email. This is for e-document users where unregistered recipients usually produce an error, and this error can now be used to trigger a fallback. We have added some functionality around payment link embedding into HTML body of emails. And we have also added some flexibility in how to present the various send actions that are used on different pages throughout Business Central, where there is a choice between the standard send actions and the document output send actions. We've also added some additional queues to the role center. These are also live improvement additions where we will collect error messages from the different channels that we send out through. And these will then produce a red tile and will ensure that they get the proper attention. And lastly, we have added support for the latest blob storage authentication. I'll go into a little more depth for each of these. And the first one is the enhanced e-document framework. So in the past, the document capture and document output XML export has been two separate functions or two separate maintained functionalities. which also meant that some of the flexibility that we enjoyed in document capture was not available in document output, which is what it has become now. So we have moved this to document output, and the first iteration, this is for the invoice and the credit memo documents, also reminders for those that use NemHandle. And it's a first step in an effort to transition document output into a more purebred accounts receivable automation platform, and for document capture to transition into a purebred accounts payable platform. The next steps is to have the remaining e-billing documents transition into document output as well. That entails order documents and also responses. The option is available right now. So for upgrades, it will be an option that is activated in Continia Feature Management. You will be able to stay on the old version or the old way of handling XML exports in document output for 2 more versions. This is to allow that there is ample time to transition some of those extensions that I know many have already added to their document output XML structures. And speaking of extensions, one of the main ones that I see used most is the addition of payment means, which is now with the addition of e-documents into the document output, a mere question of setup. So that no longer requires an extension, basically. We have also added the functionality where we can edit a failed transmission. So in document output in the past, for most instances, if a document failed during transit, either a validation or typically a validation, it would require a credit and an issuing of a new invoice. This is not necessary in anymore. Well, for most instances, so the most of the fields that are validated in the XML will now be editable in between, so that when a document fails, you can now edit or add the missing information directly into the table that the export file is built from. And this gives you a lot of flexibility. So those of you that have been looking envious towards document capture for this feature can now rest assured that it's available for document output as well. Next up is the extendability. In document output, when you needed to extend the export, it would require a full extension of the entire export code. Now the extensibility is much more flexible. I'll show you a bit about it in the app later on, but in short, you can now extend on specific nodes or attributes in the XML structure instead of the entire file export. It also entails that we now have a wider range of formats available. So all new additions in terms of formats and functionality that have been built over the past 2 years in regards to XML and e-documents have been built in the new e-documents app and not been maintained in the old one. So that is now also available for document output. And application responses. So and just to add a quick note on that is we do not have applications response functionality in document output as of today. We do aim of having this included into Service Pack 1. So we are looking at a couple of weeks' time if we don't run into too much trouble. But it is the aim to have this added within this release cycle. And the last point I just want to mention is that we have expanded on the participation management, so that there is now an option to suspend the participation per company. You can even delete it or reinstate it. And this is also a shared functionality with how it works in document capture. All right, so for the fallback to email function, the main reason why this has been added is that in Belgium, the legislation was very harsh in terms of enforcing PEPAL invoicing. And the adoption rate was not quite as fast as it should have been. But those that were ready to send in PEPAL, they would run into issues where customers wouldn't have been ready. So if one or more of their customers were not registered in the PEPAL network, they would still be required to send a PEPAL XML. But of course couldn't be able to, as well, at least not through the network, and would need to send it as an XML file in an email. So this fallback function is now available. It has been for a while. It's a hidden feature, so you would need to add it in the designer, but it's a hidden feature of the output profile, and it's a simple function that will generate an email if the return error from the network is that the recipient isn't registered. So in the attempt to send to an unregistered recipient will now trigger an automatic email sending instead with the XML file as an attachment to that. For the email part, we have added the provisions to add the payment link. So BC Standard provides a framework for payment providers to publish apps with links to their payment service, so that the invoice recipients can pay directly from a click in an email. This is now also made available in document output. In terms of send functionality, the main reason here is that with the transition from document capture to document output in terms of sending electronic invoices, we will also be seeing an influx of many users that have been used to the standard send functions in Business Central. And those differ a little bit from how document output works. So the send function flexibility is to enable them to set up document output in a way that it behaves more like when they use standard function. I'll be showing a little bit of how it looks in app, but in short, it will be enabling you to set up preferences in terms of what you want, how you want the send functions to be presented on different pages. And lastly, we have, not lastly, second to last, we will also add the queues in the row center. These queues will select error messages in the event that we receive them. So if the downstream system of the transmission in whatever channel it is, could be downloads, could be e-document, could be printer. If we receive an error message, we can place this in the queue, and we will paint it red, and that will then hopefully draw enough attention so that these errors can be cleared and the messages can come out correctly. Lastly, we have added, and this is in line with all the Continia apps, actually. So when the use of Azure Blob storage, which is also being used in document output, we have added the SAS token and the Enter ID for authentication. And the reasons are, as with the other apps, it's for the increased security and also for the reduced performance impact. So this is keeping up with the Microsoft guidelines. With that, I would like to show you in app what some of these things are going to look like. Let me just re-enter. So first off, with the addition of e-documents, some of the document output settings will be changed or will look different from what you are used to. The first part is on the output profiles. So if we look at the output profiles here, we see that some added fields are present, and we have a field that has a different different caption, but also a completely different function. So the field that I highlight here is where we in the old version would have the e-document setup. The e-document setup was quite comprehensive. It would have the whole entire export, the delivery, and the validation codes in them. But in this case, we use a sender profile. So the sender profiles are a bit less busy, I would say. What they do is they can set up the sender ID scheme and the participation. For those of you who've already or who are already familiar with e-documents in document capture, would also see a change here, because the sender profile is now a separate thing from the participation. In the past, in document capture and e-documents, the participation would be where everything was defined. But since we in document output also are able to send XML without having a participation, and with a alternative sender ID scheme, if we use, let's say, email attachment as the distribution channel, we have now added the sender profile as a means to control that in the output profile. So we set up these different sender profiles with the participation and the sender ID scheme and the sender ID values. And for the rest, it works exactly as it did with the e-document setup. So we set them up, and we can specify each of the output profile template with linked with templates for a specific setup, as well as we could in the old version of it. Secondly, we have an enabled checkbox here that will determine whether or not we want to send through the network. So in instances where we need XML invoicing, but not through a network, but through an email or a file storage, we can disable it here and then either send through email or a file storage. So the file storage it works the same as it did with the old export. It's been moved away from the e-document setup page, and it's not a part of the sender profile, but it has a separate field now in the output profile. So this is where you will define the path in which you want to store or in which you want to place your XML files if you use a third-party service for the transmission via an FTP. It requires the installation of document output service as well, so that we have a link where we can use local storage resources. The last part, and now I have unhidden it, but this is the fallback to email. So this is something we can enable out here. In the designer, you just unhide it or just show it, and it will be available. What it does is if there is no registered recipient, so if it's supposed to send through network and the recipient of the file is not registered, in this case PEPL, it will revert back to an email, and it will use the same export of the file itself, but attach it to an email and send it through an email address fetched by the email template. All right. This is the main change for document output. There is some additional changes that we can find on the customer card. And I think the most important one is the one with the payment means. So payment means is now no longer, the payment means no longer require an extension. You can have this as a setup. So on the bottom of the customer card, we have the e-document settings. This is also where you would see some of the sender profile information that we looked at just now. But the added one is the option of adding a payment mean. So how that works is that we can set it up as we like here. So let's say I want to have a Norwegian kid. So I can select the kid payment mean in the list here. And it will have all the validation rules for the kit payment means already set up. So I don't need to set that up in this case, because we already provide that with eDocuments. So we have these default settings. And with this, I can now have the kit payment means added to my PEPL export file without having to extend any of it. So that's how easy that has become. If we need to have additional things, there might be some customers that have specific requirements. We can still extend, of course. This happens in the XML structures. So let me just give you a quick view of this. We did not have this in document output, because what this is basically the entire PEPL invoice structure with all the nodes and attributes listed over here. And what we see in the columns here with the table number and field is that we can here see where the values are fetched. So for each node, we can define a table where we want to fetch the value, and of course also a field number. Those of you that don't recognize these numbers, I understand, because these are not standard tables. These are temporary tables. So there is logic code running for filling in these values into these temporary tables. But this also means that you can set up your own temporary tables and your own logic, but for specific fields or specific nodes in the XML that you want to have either changed or added. So adding new or adding extension is now just a question of extending a specific field or a specific node within the XML structure itself. It would still require some extension. It would require a temporary table from which to fetch the files, and you can define it here. And of course, it would also require you to call events, so that when we run the export, so that you can ensure that we trigger the filling of your temporary tables. In case you want events, it's just a quick ticket to our support, and we will be happy to help you find the correct one. So this is a whole lot easier than it was in document output. All right. The next part I would like to show is how to edit a failed transmission. So I'm right now on a customer that has been set up to receive PayPal invoices. And if I just open up the list, there should be one that I am pretty certain will not be sent. So let me check this one out. Yes, so this one has no references. So if I attempt to send this one, I expect it to fail. So as an example, I would like to send this one as an e-document. I'll send it along. And I should be able to check my my e-document status and see that it is not valid. And let me just refresh here. It didn't do that. All right, I am cursed by the demo devils today. This is kind of sad because I can't even show you the card itself. I'll do my best in trying to visualize it for you. So what this will do is open up the e-document card, and it will present you all the different fields, but in a classic BC view and not an XML. And you can go in and fill in the empty fields, in this case the references, and then resend the e-document. Let me see if I have one that is failed. Should have one here. Let me have a look on. The one is sent. Not valid. Okay, this one says not valid. Hopefully I can open up this one. Yes. So here is the XML file presented in a style that is recognizable for most of us. And in the reference, I will be able to add a, let's say, sales order number here. And then I am allowed to resend. And it's now sent. So that's how we can do that now, instead of in the past where we needed to actually issue a credit note and then reissue a new invoice with the additional or with the changed values. That will make life a whole lot easier for a bunch of people. Okay, this is the changes in terms of e-documents in document output. It is available now, and the upgrade is coming, I think, in a week or two. I'm not sure how it is right now. Maybe we're still waiting for Microsoft for them to release it, but at least it's just a question of mere days, and we will be ready to do the transitions. And for those of you running extensions, you can hold off at least for a couple of versions. Okay, next up, I would like to show you the new functionality around the payment links. In standard, we have payment services. So in this demo environment, I just have the demo service that Microsoft provided. So there could be a whole list of these. So this is an example of a payment service for PayPal. It's been enabled. And let me see if I should have an invoice that have. Okay, yeah. So and I have an invoice here where the payment service has been added. But I would really much like to have a link in my email that people could click and just go straight to the payment. And in order to do that in document output today, we can go to the document output setup, and under the templates, we have a new item. It's called the payment link templates. Here we can set up the templates for the different payment services. So here I've set one up for a PayPal, or the PayPal one, and it is linked to the payment service here. And over here I see the different items that I can merge into my HTML from the payment service. So this is just fetched directly from the payment service that is listed up here. And I can have it presented in HTML with whichever style I would like. You're free to code that as you want, and in terms of the text, the colors, and the positioning and stuff like that. So that is all a free playground in, well, of course, limited to what you can do with HTML in emails. But otherwise, there are no restrictions there. So what that does is that it now allows me to add it to my email template. So if we go back to the template setup, and I choose email templates in this case, and I'll go to my sales invoice. So on my sales invoice line, I now have the payment link as an item, or as a merge item. It's listed as a merge field. So if you're used to using this tool, it will be listed under the merge field section. It's all the way on the bottom, but it's not set up as a classic merge field on the template as you would with any other merge field. So it's just a hard-coded one that is in the list. And of course, you can also use your percentage sign and start typing here. It's all the same as we used to. So now I have the payment link in my email template, or in the HTML template of my email template. I'll save it, and I should be able to open the invoice that we had a look at before. I think this was the one. Yes. So if we open the email, I should get an email with the payment link in the text body of the email, and that should also be clickable. Yeah. Let's see what happens. Can I open the link? All right. So that takes me directly to the PayPal. Well, in this case, a mock PayPal. Let me just close this one. So that was the payment link, now available, and quite easy to use. The main trick is, of course, the HTML coding, so the style sheets, I would say. But we will be providing some defaults that you can use. Those aren't included just yet. They might be in the upcoming service pack. But other than that, it's a question of some CSS work, and then you're all ready to go. All right, last part I just want to show you real quick are the changes to the send functions. So now that we're here on a document, I can just quickly show you the send functions as they are here. So these are the document output send functions, as you already know them, and these are the standard ones, as you already know them. In the old version, you could opt to either hide or show the standard print or send functions, so they would be totally gone if you did not want to have people inadvertently using the wrong send functions. But now that flexibility or that choice is a little more granular, and just how granular I'll show you in a second. So first off, let's go to the document output setup, where we can see some new items over here, which is the hide send action confirmation. This is the dialog that the central send function would usually present. It's not exactly identical, but it has a similar meaning to it. It also has a default send method that it will present, and this is set in the field here. So if you enable it, you can either choose that the default send action should be direct. Direct means it would then fetch the output profile and template straight away and print the report and send it off. Or you can choose to have the default method to be sent to queue. That requires, of course, that there is an email or that there is a queue activated, but it will send in the background. So there's no halting the session for running the report or anything. It will just be put into the queue and run in the background there. That's the first part. The next one is to set up the visibility of these send options, and that is set up separately in document output setup, but it's called the send action visibility. So what it does is that it allows you to set up the different send actions, whether to show them or hide them, but in combination. And you can link that to a specific group of documents. Let me just edit it here. So if we add the sales document group here, we can set up that we want to hide the standard print, but we would still like the standard email to be there. And we would, let's see, we would hide this one. So, but we will still keep the document output tab. We can actually hide the document output tab completely as well. But let's see the changes that this made. So if we go back, we can go back to the same invoice. So in the standard send functions, okay, it should have been hidden. It isn't. Oh yeah, the send function is, so the send print or send is hidden here. We still have the entire document output cluster. We can go back and see what happens if we remove that. So now we want to hide the whole thing. But does that mean that we can't do anything? No, it's just hidden. So if you hide the whole the things, let's say you have setups where you don't want users to manually send anything. There are scenarios where this could be an issue. You can do that, and you can hide the send functions. So let me just go back to so in this case we have hidden the send functions entirely. So this is only the PDF save and the e-document sending, and there is no document output actions available any longer. Well, at least not up here. They will be found over here in the fact box still. They are still available, but they will be hidden from the action ribbon up here. And that is basically the new stuff that I can show. I can show you quickly the queues, but I have not been able to make anything fail, so I cannot show you the red color. But the failed tiles are here by the document queues, and in this the Continia delivery network. So here we have a failed queue. We have a failed queue for print. We have a failed queue for a download. And we have a failed queue for documents in general, which would typically be if we get an error message from either the email system or from the email accounts. So yes, I'm wondering, did we get a lot of questions during the session? Are there anything in the Q&A where it would make sense to show that in app?
I don't think so, Daniel. I think we are on top of most things. Well, I think maybe you can take a quick glimpse, but in the Q&A. But I think maybe from your point of view there might be, but I don't think so. And we will, of course, as promised, make a thorough answer to you. If not now, if we haven't done it, the Q&A will still be open afterwards, so we will continue to answer on the Q&A for a while. Of course, we will close it down at a certain time, but we are going to answer all the questions that came in. So I don't know, Daniel, if you feel the urge to go and explore something in the Q&A, but yeah, again, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm scrolling through it to see.
There is one question. Yeah, I think it's one question that's good to highlight. There was this question from Theisbach. What about OEUL format? Would eDocument also support this format?
Yes.
And we will continue support OEUL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. OEUL is still a supported format. I don't know whether it makes sense to show that, but let's see if because the participation I have is a PEPPOL, and the formats are now in the past we had the formats defined by the export codes in the eDocument setup. Now the formats are defined by the participation. So this participation that we have listed here. Oh, sorry, let me just show you here. So this participation that we have listed here is where the format is fetched from. So if you have a participation from nemhandle, the format would automatically be a OEO-UBL. And then you would have this participation. So what you would do is you would add a OEO-UBL here. And then let's pretend I have an OEO-UBL participation, and I would have that linked here. But yes, we do. Actually, we just saw all the formats that we now have available for eDocuments. So we have the Australian, New Zealand formats. We have some Polish formats. Pint is available. And of course, X-Rechnung, but we had that prior as well. Maybe in terms of Zugpferd, I might want to add a few comments. We have an example here of a Zugpferd output profile. It's pretty much the same. There's one change though, and that is that we now have provision to name the exported XML part. So the XML part embedded into the PDF, we can name that ourselves. So it does not necessarily have the QID.xml here as would be standard. We can name that in let's say the way that we've done it here, that we just call it X-Rechnung, because the XML export has been is using the X-Rechnung format for the embedding. Other than that, Zugpferd is pretty much as it was before. Let me see, are there any questions? Can we decide here?
Maybe, Daniel, there was just one question appearing here, asking if it was possible to send electronic sales order confirmations. And I just want to put a few words on that, because this is actually something we are working on at this moment. We are seeing if we can have this available within the next major release to fully support the whole sales flow, talking eDocument, and make sure all the account receivable processes in this flow is supported in document output. So no, it's not currently available. It's still supported by document capture, but we are currently working hard on having this as a feature in DO as well.
Yep. All right. I think there are no further questions. I don't see anything else that hasn't been touched. Hang on, will it be able to? Oh, sorry, there's a question here. Will it be able to hide the sent email document in the future too? Well, it's not planned at this point. But that might be worth taking into consideration. Can we decide? Okay, this one has been replied. Yes. All right, cool. But if there are no further questions or comments, I would just like to say thank you for attending today. I hope that you will receive the new e-document functionality in document output with pleasure, and that will make your lives easier. But with that, thank you, and have a pleasant day.